introduction, I've just got to say, it's so fun when classes take me up on the idea of dancing during the countdown, and Miss Robinson's class was such a slow build there. That was amazing. So way to go, guys. My name is Jesse. I'm your virtual adventure guide here with Exploring by the Seat of Your Pants. And I know we've got a lot of familiar faces in the crowd, both live and on YouTube. But if you are joining us for the first time, we are all about bringing conservation, adventure, and science into classrooms around the world. Everything we do goes live to our YouTube channel and stays there forever. So if you missed something today, if you want to watch again, share with your family and friends, check it out on our YouTube channel. Over 3,000 videos there. We're going to dive in today with both Cassandra and Chloe arriving in the nick of time. We got our two epic speakers today. So I'm going to welcome in Cassandra and Chloe, both from the Jane Goodall Institute of Canada's Youth Advisory Council. It's so thrilling to have you both here with us today. And we're going to talk about spirituality and science in nature walks. Again, getting out in nature, exploring the natural world and wildlife is one of the big things that we do as an organization. But something that we've really seen teachers respond beautifully to over the last couple of years is the idea of looking at things through an Indigenous lens. So we're going to take a little bit of a journey together, talk about the Jane Goodall Institute of Canada, their amazing work that they do, and dive in on sort of this multifaceted way of seeing the world around you. And so I'm so thrilled to get underway. Cassandra and Chloe's connection might have been a little iffy, but welcome in both of you, and take us away, ladies. Thank you.
Hi, everybody. My name's Cassandra, and beside me is Chloe. We are both members of the Youth Advisory Council at the Jane Goodall Institute of Canada, where they focus on three major crises. One is biodiversity loss, the second is climate change, and the third is environmental inequity. And this past year in Montreal, Chloe and I had the wonderful experience of going to COP15 in Montreal, which was the UN conference on biodiversity, where we got to present this presentation, and now we are getting another chance to present it to you guys today. First, I'd like to start off with a land acknowledgement. I know Jesse's mentioned that we have people coming in from many different provinces and Maryland, which we love. If you don't know, the United States and Canada are known as the traditional territories of Turtle Island. It is home to many First Nations, Métis, and Inuit peoples. And I am a Ojibwe, actually, from Wajashko-Neagum Nation, which is near Thunder Bay, Ontario. And if you don't know where that is, it's on the top of Lake Superior, in the middle of not the middle of the three Great Lakes. Sorry, that's where I am right now. But yeah. That's our land acknowledgement, and now I'll pass it off to Chloe.
Hi everyone, so I'm joining you from the University of Guelph Bridgetown campus, which is where I'm currently doing some field work today, but we wanted to do a quick introduction about the term biodiversity, which may not be something that we're all familiar with, but it's a really big term that's coming up a lot lately, especially when we talk about climate change and about the environment. And today we're going to talk about nature walks and biodiversity. So what is biodiversity? There are three main types. There's ecosystem, where if you take a look on the right, there are two pictures of mountains. And they're both mountains, but they look super duper different, right? That's because they're halfway across the world from each other. And so having variety in the types of ecosystems and habitats that we have is super important. And you can kind of think of some reasons why just in your head. Like, look at how gorgeous those two different places are. Can you imagine how the rocks are different, how the plants that live there might be different because the soil is different, and all sorts of things like that. Now, the middle picture is about the biodiversity of species. And so look at all those different types of wildflowers. I can count like over 5 just from looking at the different colors. More than that, what about all of the grasses or the insects that rely on all of those flowers? Some species only have like one friend that they pollinate, for example. And so there could be tons of stuff like that there. All of those different species, that variety supports a variety of other species. And now this one is kind of like a secret biodiversity, but genetic diversity is when there's variety within a species, but there's variation in like the traits that you have. So those two ducks are the same species, but they look pretty different, don't they? One's white and one's like dark looking. And that's because like you, me, and everyone else, our genes make up who we are, and everyone is different. that diversity is really important for the futures of a species, because without diversity, you have a lot more weaknesses to certain things, and everybody shares those weaknesses.
So, as Chloe mentioned, biodiversity is really, really important for the Earth. And what's actually a major problem right now is that we're losing a lot of Earth's biodiversity. So for example, you can see on the top of the graph that coral reefs through the past 20 or so years have been really declining at a super fast rate, which is not good, because this can damage how our society collects resources, but it can also cause many downstream effects through different food chains. So say this decrease in coral reef population might affect certain fish that are living in these coral reefs and around these coral reefs. And because of that, there's less smaller fish that are around. And because there's less of these smaller fish around, then there's less food for the bigger fish to eat. And then there's less food for the bigger fish to eat. There's obviously less bigger fish. And if there's less bigger fish, then maybe there's less food for sharks and dolphins and whales to eat, which then you kind of see how it becomes problem after problem in these different types of food systems. It's almost similar to trying to draw something with only a piece of paper. Obviously, you're not going to get very far if you don't have another pencil crayon or a pencil sharpener, you know? So this is why when we're losing Earth's biodiversity, we need to be mindful of all the different food systems and all of the different ecosystems that are present on Earth and how they contribute to us, but everything else around it. So therefore, we kind of need to ask ourselves this really big question of how can we appreciate and preserve biodiversity?
Let's think about why it's super important, all three of the different types. Well, as Cassandra was saying, we need to rely on variety. Humans are we love variety, and it's also super important. One of my favorite ways to appreciate variety is through nature walks. So I actually did a webinar last year about this because it's one of my favorite things to do. And if we could go to the next slide, I want you to think about what a nature walk really is and maybe how you kind of go on them all the time. So nature's everywhere. Even if you live in the middle of downtown somewhere or you're out in the country, there's still something green. There are still little insects. There are still earthworms or little potato bugs. And all of that can be appreciated. One of my favorite things to do is look at the different times of day even and how different they are. Early in the morning, I was up at 4:30 this morning and I could hear a bunch of robins. But later in the day, I stopped hearing the robins as much and I started hearing more of the red-winged blackbirds and common grackles and European starlings. And so just even within 3 hours after dawn, the amount of birds that sang were changing. Another thing is, look at all the different seasons that we have here in Canada. How can you appreciate those? All with amazing nature walks. So moving on to what a nature walk is, you kind of think of, I think of two main categories. So number one, and the picture on the left kind of describes it, is scientific. Maybe you're going on a walk and you're paying attention to everything around you and observing oh, what is that tree? Or are you listening for the frogs calling? And maybe you're thinking about that and asking questions why are these plants coming up this time of year? Why does this one look different from this one? But then there's another kind of nature walk where maybe you're not thinking so actively about what's around you, but maybe appreciating it more or thinking yourself. So that's what we're going to call a spiritual walk today. When you think about things that are less about whys and whats and more appreciating it. And that'll be Cassandra's half because I'm definitely a little more of a science geek. So with that, I wanted to talk about something called citizen science. It may be another word that you've never heard of, but I bet a lot of you might have already participated in something like it. Citizen science is when someone who isn't trained in anything fancy, the topic, is still contributing information to a project. For example, I might not know a lot about fish, but I can report observations and photos onto a website, and that website can help scientists, and they can use that information to know what species are where. And so it's super, super duper awesome because people like you and me and whomever might not need all of this fancy information. They might not need to go to school for it, but they can still help out because they care about it. I wanted to show everyone some of my favorite examples of citizen science projects and maybe some that you can participate in. So if we go to the next slide. Here are some of my favorite projects. And
Oh, I think we have a little bit of a lag going on. That's what's happening.
Gotcha. That might be my fault. All good. So some of these are ones that you can participate in here in Canada. And one of my favorites is called iNaturalist. So what you do is you download an app on your phone called iNaturalist, and then you just take pictures of things. You take pictures of whatever you want, like a cool mushroom you found in the woods on a walk, or maybe there's some sort of fly that's in your house and you can just snap a photo of it. You upload that picture, and then other people on the internet can come and identify it for you. Once it reaches enough identifications and people are pretty confident that it's what they think it is, that becomes research grade. And so that can be used for all sorts of studies and science. And all it is you taking a phone, like picture with an app. Other ones like these are all super duper cool. And so maybe you want to ask your parents or teachers about what sort of projects you might be able to join in on.
I actually, fun fact, used iNaturalist before. And I used iNaturalist when I was doing a summer research project. Yeah, when I was doing my Indigenous medicinal plants project, I used iNaturalist to kind of get a bunch of information about all of the different Indigenous species that were used around, and then I did go into some extra resources. But so yeah, iNaturalist is cool.
Hundreds of people were probably helping you with your research project.
Basically, they're kind of cool like that.
Fantastic. That is super duper cool.
Yes, it is. And that kind of leads into some of my favorite wellness activities. As Chloe mentioned, there's really so many ways that we can engage with nature, like going through for a walk. For some, we will seek it for science and we'll try to answer this bigger question, like the populations of certain birds in our neighborhood. But for others, it could just be going out for a walk just for the sake of ourselves. Maybe you just wanted to take a walk with your friends and catch up, or you just wanted to relax at the beach. For other cultures, engaging with the earth is much deeper. So it could be going back to the land where generations of families have lived, or about preserving the art and culture that's still present on the land. So the big idea here is that there's really many ways that we can engage with nature. Me personally, as you can see, my name is Cassandra, and one of the things I really loved to do as a kid was when I go to the beach and swim around, and then I'd come out of the water, and I was maybe like 6, 7, 8. So maybe some of you guys are the same age as I was back then, but I would bury myself into the sand, and then I would leave like my shoulders and my head up, and I would just take a nap. So my dad would always call me like Cassandra because I really loved falling asleep in the sand. So maybe for me as a kid, that was one of my favorite wellness activities, and I thought I'd share it with you guys. And I guess overall, what we're trying to do is wonder, well, why am I talking about spirituality, I guess, in a sense, in our wellness? And why is Chloe talking about science? And how do we really do them together on a nature walk? And why do they fit in some ways? And why do they not? Well, for some, a wellness activity is something that everybody enjoys. And science is also something that everybody enjoys. But what we really need to look at is if Earth is enjoying how we are engaging with it.
That's a really big thing that a lot of people think about sometimes. For me, when I think about walking through a trail, for example, and I'm going on a hike, as much as I want to maybe look off trail at some of the plants and things that exist off trail, it's not the nicest thing to do because maybe there are gentle spring flowers that are trying to grow. And so me walking off trail can hurt them. We need to learn to appreciate everything around us with a level of respect and reciprocity, no matter whether it's scientific or not. And ways that I love to do science and spirituality on a nature walk together is by walking with my friends. So for me, it's spiritual because I get super happy when I go on walks with my friends. I've got someone who's busy flipping logs for salamanders, and I'm looking up in the trees for birds. It's a really good time. And it boosts my energy and my mood. But at the same time, I've got friends who are looking at observations of things maybe I didn't look at in the first place. Or they know things about stuff that I don't, and we can share that together. So those are just a couple ways that we can think about respecting both the environment that we're in and maybe helping it out with science and spirituality.
Okay, so what you are looking at here is, I think the best example I could give you of why engaging with nature spiritually sometimes does relate to preserving biodiversity. And one of the big things about that is establishing a personal connection with the earth. And for some, that might sound a little bit strange, but for others, it might just make a lot of sense. It's just simply enjoying what Earth has to offer you in a way that almost seems like your friend, you know? If you go out there and you get to enjoy the beach or you get to enjoy a bike ride with your friends, then you should also be able to make sure that the Earth enjoys it back in a way. And it's kind of like I scratch your back and you scratch mine. So on one of these adventures nearby where I am is the Agawa pictographs, and this is in Lake Superior Provincial Park. And these pictographs are almost over 400 years old. And what's crazy is on the left is actually my sister's hand touching what I believe is Michu Picchu, which is just a water spirit and a master of all water creators. And it can take many different shapes. So it could be a cougar or a deer or a bird or a snake. And you actually have to walk in a little bit to kind of see these pictographs that are really so old. But what's kind of scary now is if you look to the picture on your right, that's where the water is right now. And every few years, the water kind of gets higher and higher and higher. And pretty soon, people are probably not going to be able to like walk out and see these pictographs anymore. And further than that, there's probably going to be a time where the water will raise over these pictographs and these images that were over 400 years old will just kind of be destroyed. And there are some of the things that we're doing in today's society that is contributing to that. So when we lose biodiversity in our water, water loses its ability to kind of be stable and protect itself against corrosion and coastal erosion. And because of that, that's why the water levels kind of rise. And we also have other things like hotter temperatures and more rain and everything else. But as I mentioned before, when we lose biodiversity, we disrupt all of these different food chains and we disrupt these ecosystems. And that's really what leads to these greater problems that we kind of see everywhere. In essence, Earth really gives us everything, from the beautiful flowers and the cherry blossoms you can see down below to all of our different seasons, to Indigenous peoples being able to use all what the animal provides for many different purposes, like making canoes or different teepees, to all of the different animals that live there, like starfish that live on our coastal shores, and bumblebees that pollinate all of our flowers and everything, to collecting wild blueberries for us and probably a lot of bears to eat as well. In essence, we should. Yeah, go ahead, Chloe.
Sorry, I was going to say, Cassandra, it sounds like to me you're saying that a lot of Indigenous peoples have already realized the sort of connectedness that we have to nature and why it's super important to know what's there and to give back to it. Would you say that nature walks are one of the ways that they've been noticing what's going on for like centuries?
Yeah, exactly. I've actually talked to many people who've been now recognized as advisors because they have generations and generations of knowledge about just everything about the earth, from the way different moose walk through their lands to where certain endangered species are on different trails. There's a whole plethora of knowledge that's there that can kind of help us out for these next problems that we might face.
And these things are definitely changing, as we all know, with what's going on in the world. But biodiversity can help to reduce those negative impacts in a lot of different ways. That's what a lot of the science is showing nowadays. And so not only is it important for the planet, it's important for us and for this histories and connectedness that people do share with the land. Anyway, I think we have a few takeaways from our conversation today, everybody. So, number one, biodiversity and the environment as a whole is crucial, which means essential, super duper important for the survival and happiness, the fulfillment of human beings. Cassandra was talking about that experience around Superior Provincial Park, and that's a part of like history and culture that we may be losing because of past and present environmental impacts that humans have on the environment. So we can see that nature kind of ties into everything. Another important point is that we can all learn to admire and help with the conservation of biodiversity through nature walks. And Cassandra, I'll let you hit home the last point because I feel like you've shared that with me so strongly.
Yeah, so our last takeaway is that we need to kind of learn to walk with nature, not on it. And by walking with nature, we're kind of taking it in our hand and leading it with us. Sometimes I feel like we could be letting it fall behind by just letting ourselves take whatever we want. But if we have this personal connection to Earth as though it's our friend, then we can learn to be more reciprocal of it and practice more gratitude and make sure that we leave it in a better place than when we found it. And with that, that is the end of our presentation.
Amazing, ladies. Well, thank you so much for the dual journey and perspectives. I really, really appreciate that. As I shared at the beginning, if people want to find out more about the Jane Goodall Institute of Canada, janegoodall.ca. I've also put our Youth Advisory Council link into the YouTube chat and a StreamYard chat, so kids can check out that as well. I've got a few questions from online from some of our YouTube groups and via email. And Ms. Robinson's class, if you have questions, let me know. I'll come to you live to take those. But I'm going to start with, if kids wanted to be part of the Youth Advisory Council, how would they do that? And how old do you have to be like you ladies?
If I remember correctly, it's between 17 and 25, right, Cassandra? So we have applications for you to join a one-year term in the springtime, usually around April is when you can apply. You can check it out on our website and definitely follow our social medias. We'll post it on Instagram, on Facebook. All of those will be great places that will tell you when the postings are up. And we'll do interviews in June and May. That's actually happening right now. And it's about 12 of us from across Canada that have come together to talk about some of the issues that the world has and how we can help them.
Fantastic. Thank you both. Miss Dent's class in Sarnia wants to know, what's the rarest plant you've ever seen? Anything that jumps out as like a really cool particular plant?
I can take that one first, if that's okay, Cassandra. I already know. I've already got it in my head. Okay, so the Youth Advisory Council was super grateful to have gone on a very small trip out to Nishingaming territory, which is close to the Bruce Peninsula in Ontario. And we were being shown around by a really incredible Indigenous group that's local to the area called the Bagadawat Alliance. They knew every single plant that was there like the back of their hands because they walk it all the time. One plant that I got shown is this really, really cool little herbaceous plant with a flower called a purple rattlesnake root. And I had never seen one before in my life, but it was such an incredible experience. It likes really funky habitat. It likes what's called an alvar, which is really, really rocky land. So there's like almost no soil on it. So you never see many trees, and the things that grow there are pretty shrubby and small. Cassandra, what about you?
Oh my gosh, I have to kind of think about that. For the past few years, I really have been going for a lot of different nature walks, and I've gotten to see some really cool plants kind of show up. One of them is kind of similar to that one. It was a pink millwort. And I just thought it looked so cool because I thought it was something else before, but I didn't remember what it was. But basically it has this kind of like spine, and then all of these different little flower heads kind of shoot out, and then at the top it's kind of like little dandelion heads. And I just thought it was the coolest looking thing, but then I was so upset because it was endangered. But it really, like, I don't know, it looked pretty strong over there, so I'm happy I got to see it.
Well, there you go, class. Our favorite species are both endangered plants that are native to North America. So keep an eye out. Keep an eye out on that, and think about all the endangered plants, insects, amphibians that we might not pay attention to in our own backyards.
You spent so much time mentioning the iNaturalist app as a great citizen science tool. I'll link that in with a Seek app too, which is like the kids spin-off of that. If anyone wants to check those out, they're amazing tools for learning about local wildlife. We're using them for our Backyard Bio campaign right now, so I really appreciate that we highlighted that and some of your favorite species too. Sue J and Ms. Robinson's class has a question for us, so I'm going to head to them. If you guys want to come on up, take us away. Hey!
How can we help biodiversity?
Yes, how can we help biodiversity? The best question of all.
So there's so many ways that you guys can get involved and help biodiversity. If you guys have lawns outside, I know this is getting the time to be flower season where everybody's starting to get gardening. You should ask your parents to look into some native wildflowers and some native plants that are in your region that you could maybe plant. Or you could ask and look up some of the invasive species that are kind of around. And if you see some invasive species whenever you're out and about, get rid of them. And maybe those are some of my best two ideas. Chloe, do you have any good ideas for them?
I think something that we forget about a lot is that knowing about what's going on in our planet is one of the biggest first steps to tackling issues. So try to learn about what biodiversity means and how we're losing it, what issues are contributing to it. For me, my passion is about how farmland is both a source of reducing biodiversity, but a potential solution for things like climate change and stuff. So maybe you can take a look at and ask people, what are we losing biodiversity to, and have conversations about it. Talk about it with your class, ask your teachers, ask your parents, bring it up during lunch. It's always a super fun conversation when I'm outside and I'm like, hey friends, did you just hear that warbling vireo right now? It's so cool. So just knowing what's out there is one of my favorite things.
I love this as an answer. It's one of the things actually all our conservationists like to talk about regularly, is the fact that just sharing the stories that you learn, sharing your passion for things really does go a long way. A lot of us, all three of us in this call, I'm sure some of you and a huge number of our speakers that we bring on began as kids, just getting excited about things, sharing them, being the biggest nerd in the class. Doing that actually does go a long way to helping a lot of great things happen. So thank you for that, guys. Bria, I'm coming to you in a second, Miss Robinson's class. I will come back momentarily. We had a question again from Miss Dent's class about cool animals. We talked about plants a minute ago. Are there any particularly fantastic animals you've seen in Canada or?
Oh my gosh, what's the name of it? Just last year, I don't know if this is the right name of it, but I'm sure, yes, it is. about last year, I was helping my dad clean out our backyard, and I don't know if you guys know what a Luna moth is, but Luna moths are kind of a rare moth, and they only live for, I believe, about a week, and they're actually not born with a mouth, so they're not allowed to eat, and they're only goal is to kind of just reproduce and then die. And I unfortunately caught the moth in its final stages. Hopefully it got the chance to continue the population, because I think they could be doing better as a species. But yeah, that was a really cool experience for me. Chloe?
That is
Yeah.
so cool. I am so jealous right now. I've never seen a Luna moth, but I've learned all about them. And for me, I really love birds. And so I wanted to talk about this bird that I saw when I was doing my field work 2 days ago. So, okay, this was a picture I took on my phone. I had my binoculars out, of course. And if we take a look, there's that picture. And so that is a Scarlet Tanager. He's a
Oh, Chloe got so excited that it cut out for a second. I brought up the name Scarlet Tanager on the bottom, and
absolutely stunning.
We got Chloe back. You're back.
Oh shit, was I gone?
That's okay. You just cut out for a second. We heard Scarlet Tanager, and then you just disappeared. You were so excited you broke the internet. I think
Did
that's
people
a good
get
sign.
to see the Scarlet Tanager?
We saw the little picture, and I'm going to bring up a big one for everybody too. So
Okay.
you can tell us about the experience, and I'll get you a big picture up.
Well, I was out on a nature walk, and I really love looking for all sorts of different birds because a lot of them are pretty easy to see and identify, and also pretty easy to learn by sound. So there's a lot more than you'd think that's actually out there. I only saw it at a park outside of my neighborhood. So here's a fantastic picture. Look at that boy. He is a tropical friend that comes all the way up here in Eastern North America.
Kids, if you can find something in life that you're as passionate as Chloe and Cassandra are about Luna moths and Scarlet Tanagers, you're pretty set. That's a good goal to aim for. Bria, we're going to head back to Miss Robinson's class. We're going to take one more question and wrap up. Time flies and you're having fun in these broadcasts, so come on in and take us away. Welcome back, guys. Hey.
What's the most popular plant you find in the spring?
Ooh, most popular plant. What's the most common thing?
I think I've got a pretty good answer. If you want, I can go first, Cassandra.
Go for it.
So when I'm out on my walks, just in my neighborhood, something I notice a lot is something called garlic mustard. Has anyone ever heard of it? If not, it's kind of a weed. It's an invasive species from Europe. So that means it's not normally found around here, and it's pretty yucky. It takes over a lot of space that other native species would like it replaces the trillium, and it releases these chemicals that other plants don't like, so only it can grow, and it kicks out the other plants, just like a little bit of a bully. But it comes out in the spring. You can tell what it looks like. It's got these really, really tall stems that'll grow and these pointy leaves, and if you actually, it is tasty, but it tastes like garlicky. And I don't like it very much because it bullies the other plants a little bit and it reduces biodiversity.
Oh, that was a great answer.
Yeah.
One of the ones I see, I'm going to give actually two examples. So for the past 4 years, I was actually living near Niagara Falls, where there's so many cherry blossom trees there, and it is so beautiful in the spring months to see them blossom. And if you haven't ever seen a cherry blossom tree blossom, basically they start off and they're in this white color, and then as they slowly mature, you get these pink and these light pink flowers all the way to like kind of a dark, really dark pink, and then their season kind of ends. And it was just such an experience to be able to see these trees because they're so pretty. But another one that I've also gotten to see a lot down there is actually called a common elderberry. And common elderberry is kind of all around. It kind of does its thing. It's really diverse in its habitats. You can find it in just different springs and meadows, but you could also find it in different forests, and you can just find it in different bogs. And I think it looks kind of cool. But yeah, those are my answers.
Fantastic, ladies. Again, your passion for nature shone through in the entire program today from, again, a variety of perspectives, and that's what this has been all about. Thank you both so much for joining us for the first time. Again, janegoodall.ca if you want to find out more about the amazing work the Jane Goodall Institute of Canada does. The Youth Advisory Council will have linked that into all our classes. So for our students, as you get a little bit older from where you are right now, you can absolutely look into that. But there's tons of opportunities for classrooms of all ages to take part in the amazing work they do to help protect biodiversity. And Chloe, Cassandra, just thank you both so much for joining. What we do to wrap up, I'm going to bring in Miss Robinson's class and say a thank you and farewell. And live classes at home, thank you. You guys can scream at home wherever you are as well. But have a wonderful day, everybody. Miss Robinson.